We're on week 12 of the live cooking series. We're winding down on summer. So we're winding down on summer produce being available. So it's definitely good to get those last minute trips into a local farmer's market if there's one open by you, and stock up on all of these summer ingredients that we've been using throughout the cooking series. So our recipe today is a Mediterranean summer pasta. I put the word summer in a lot of the recipes that we're making, because a lot of these dishes can be, kind of switched up with whatever kinds of veggies you want to use. So it's not, you can make this Mediterranean pasta at another time of year with different vegetables. So I call it Mediterranean summer pasta because we're using summer veggies in this one. So we have some zucchini. So we're bringing back the zucchini. We used it in we used zucchini and yellow summer squash in our risotto. So for this dish, we just want zucchini that's sliced pretty thin. So like this, about like a 1/4 inch thick or so, because we want it to be able to cook down in the skillet. We want it to cook down to be really soft, along with cherry tomatoes. So this was one large zucchini and 2 cups of cherry tomatoes that have been just sliced in half. If you have like assorted sizes of cherry tomatoes and you have some that are bigger than others, you can of course cut them in quarters. So we're going to be cooking the zucchini and the tomatoes down to get super soft, to almost create like a very light sauce. So that's why we want the zucchini to be pretty thinly sliced, and the tomatoes cut in half. But the thing with the tomatoes, if you have some that are a little bit bigger, it actually can be nice because then you can have some tomatoes that are still kind of whole, whereas the smaller pieces will really kind of cook down to make a sauce. So don't worry about them all being chopped into the same size. Just cut them in half. If they're really big, like I said, you can cut them in quarters. To make this dish, we want a big skillet. If you have preferably one that's deep-sided like this, because we're going to be putting all those veggies in here, so just so you have room without your skillet overflowing. But just any large, even if you don't have a tall-sided one, just any large skillet, some kind of wooden spoon or other spatula that you're going to cook with. And of course, we are making pasta. So this is Mediterranean summer pasta. So you can use whatever kind of pasta you like. I'm using a whole grain penne. I like to use penne with this, but you can really use whatever kind of pasta that you like. You can use a whole grain pasta. You can use like a plant-based pasta, like a chickpea or a lentil pasta if you're gluten-free, or just regular old pasta works too. So that's up to you. So you want to I have a pot of water already boiling over here. So depending on, the pasta you're using, you'll just cook it according to your package directions. So that's simple enough. So we're gonna start by sauteing some shallot with olive oil. You don't have to use shallot, you could use onion here, whatever you prefer. So, all right, so we're gonna cut up the shallot first. I like to just show you something like this. We've used shallot quite a few times in the cooking series, but so I cut it the same way as I would a big onion. So I just cut it lengthwise so that we keep the root intact on the ends to help hold it together. Just peel it. So we only need like 2 tablespoons of minced shallot here. So it's about 1 small shallot like this. This might even be more than we need. And so then I realize this is like backwards because I'm a lefty. I'm going to turn like this. So we can cut off our little end there. And then just like I do with an onion, just cut lengthwise down. This just helps because we want it to be nice and minced, so we're not getting like big chunks of shallot. So cutting it this way just helps you get those smaller pieces. But that's why we like to keep the root intact on the end so that it holds together better and doesn't fall apart when you cut it. Same thing with an onion, so that's why we like to cut it lengthwise versus cutting it crosswise when we cut the halves. And so like I said, you could use any onion here. I just like shallot in this. And we always, whenever we're sauteing, for the most part, we start with some sort of onion and garlic kind of mixture to start off building flavor. So that's always going to be a good way to add your first layer of flavor to your dish. So that's it. So by cutting it that way, you get nice minced up shallot without really having to chop it up too much more. And then we're also going to want to mince up some garlic. So let's get our pan heated over a medium heat. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And I will turn this towards the pan so you can see. Okay, so we get the olive oil heated over a medium heat. We're gonna cook the shallots down a little bit first to get them softened for like 3 to 5 minutes. Then we'll add in the garlic, and then we'll start adding in all of our other veggies. Either like 1 really fat clove of garlic or 2 smaller cloves of garlic. And just get that all nice and minced up. And that also, you know, if you're like not really an onion person in general, you can always leave out onions and just at least use garlic. Or if you're not a garlic person, you can leave it out. But you want to usually start with some, you know, some kind of onion or garlic to get some flavor going in the dish. Your oil is hot once it's kind of like has like a sheen to it. And it's a little bit thinner as you move your pan around. And you can also always test to make sure your oil is hot enough by putting a piece of the shallot or whatever it is in there and seeing if it sizzles. All right, so our shallot's going in first. Like I said, we want to get that softened for about 3 to 5 minutes. And as always, I add a pinch of salt with any onions to help soften them without them burning. And again, that's another way to get our first, layer of flavor going. Our first seasoning with salt. Just give those a stir, and then we'll just let them sit for a couple minutes. You just want to always have your eye on any onion and garlic kind of mixture because it can go from softened to burned very quickly. So never be too far away when you're sauteing onions and garlic. All right, and so I'm actually just waiting a minute to add my pasta in. I have my water boiling here, but I want to kind of time the pasta with when the sauce is going to be done so that we can just transfer the pasta right from the pot into the skillet here. So we don't have to, get out a colander and drain the pasta or anything. We can just transfer from the pot right to the skillet. So this dish is full of a lot of just Mediterranean kinds of flavors, which we've done a lot of during the cooking series. And Mediterranean flavors just kind of lend themselves well to a lot of summer produce, which is why we've been cooking with a lot of them. So we're gonna have here some oregano. We have, of course, zucchini and tomatoes, which you see a lot in Mediterranean dishes, fresh lemon juice. We're going to be topping it with feta cheese and fresh basil. So a lot of good stuff going on in here. And it's kind of just, it's a dish that kind of showcases that using just simple, fresh ingredients can turn into a really delicious dish without, you know, it's not like too many ingredients. It's like nothing too unusual. It's actually probably a lot of like staple items that you have, and then plus, you know, the fresh veggies. And we're not adding any meat or anything to this, like any sort of protein at all, but it lends itself well to really whatever you want to toss in there. So you can serve it with some chicken breast. Shrimp would be really delicious in here. You could also, if you wanted to keep it vegetarian but add some more protein to it, you could try like some sort of white beans, like cannellini beans. All right, so my shallot's looking pretty soft, so I'm gonna add the garlic in. And we're gonna just let that cook now for another minute. I just have my pan off the heat because you've probably seen already the last, you know, whenever I'm here at the stove, I have an electric stove, so sometimes it's hard to control the heat when it starts to get too hot. So if you have an electric stove and you notice that things are burning, because it's much harder to control the temperature when it's electric, just lift your pan up to give it a chance to cool down a little bit so it doesn't burn. Alright, once that cooks for just a couple more seconds, we're going to toss in our zucchini. We're going to let the zucchini cook down a little bit before we add the tomatoes in, because the zucchini will take a little bit longer to soften, so we'll add the zucchini in first. And I'm going to toss my pasta in at this point too. Alright, so zucchini's going in. And you want a big enough skillet too, because you want to try to get the zucchini to all kind of lay flat. If it doesn't all quite lay flat, just make sure you're stirring it every now and then so that all the zucchini is, you know, kind of getting equally cooked. And you could do this with a different kind of summer squash also. This is a good opportunity to try maybe a different kind of squash that you haven't tried before, like a patty pan squash, or you know, any kind of yellow squash. You'll see all kinds of different ones at local markets. But soon we'll be out of zucchini season and tomato season. But there's a lot of good stuff that comes into season in the fall too, so. Okay. Alright, so we just want 8 ounces of pasta, so it's half a pound, so it's half of, like a typical pasta package is a pound. The zucchini will cook for about 5 minutes before we add the tomatoes in. Oh, and I didn't mention, but of course you want to salt your pasta water to season your pasta. And this dish is nice too because it's all cooked up, you know, aside from the pasta being cooked in the pot, it's all just cooked up in the one pan, so it's pretty easy cleanup. which is always a win. All right, so once you see the zucchini is getting nice and softened, we're not, like, it doesn't need to really be like caramelized or super browned. We just really want it to be getting softened. Because essentially the zucchini and the tomatoes will kind of like melt together a little bit to create this sauce. So we just want them to be nice and soft. Okay, so you can see where I'm at now. They're, you know, if they can, like, you can see that they can like fold in half easily, then they are soft enough. So we're ready now to add in the tomatoes. Okay, so we're adding in 2 cups of halved cherry tomatoes. And along with that, a half a teaspoon of dried oregano, and some freshly ground black pepper. And now this will cook for like another 5 minutes. We want the tomatoes to be getting nice and softened, and like I said before, the smaller ones will like really burst and melt down into a sauce, and some of the bigger pieces will stay kind of whole. And that's nice, because then you still get some actual pieces, you know, bites of tomato in the pasta. So it doesn't need to all be broken down. This would also be a really good use for eggplant. Eggplant also lends well to Mediterranean dishes. I would do the eggplant, if I was doing eggplant in here, I would do it cubed or diced. And you could peel it if you're not really a fan of the skin. And then you always want, with eggplant, you want to, we did it with the crispy baked eggplant recipe that we did, but those were like, you know, long slices of eggplant. But same thing, even if you're cubing or dicing it, sprinkle some, what you could do actually if it's cubed or diced, because it's, you want to contain it if it's in pieces like that, you can put it in a colander, just like a pasta colander, and sprinkle it all with salt and just let it sit in the colander for like 30 minutes, like 20 to 30 minutes, and that will help the moisture come out of it, and that helps the eggplant to really crisp up when you're sauteing it. Not crisp up, but, you know, actually caramelize without turning, like, you may have had experience with eggplant where it turns kind of like gray and doesn't really like get caramelized. It just gets kind of like weird colored. So drawing out some of the moisture will help with it getting more caramelized, and it also takes away some of the bitterness in the eggplant. So you can let it sit in the colander with salt on it, and it will start to drain, and then you can actually squeeze the eggplant and get more of the moisture out of it. And then I would saute the eggplant before adding in the zucchini and the tomatoes, so that it has a chance to caramelize on its own. That's one of my favorite ways to use cherry tomatoes in general, is to use them just to make like a really quick homemade tomato sauce. You know, it's not like a full-on marinara sauce or anything like that. It's just a fresh cherry tomato sauce. So same thing, like you know, they'll break down, some will stay kind of whole, and it's just a light sauce that you can use to dress your pasta with. so they're already starting to get nice and soft. So you can also kind of like smash some of the cherry tomatoes to help them along with releasing the juice to really make a sauce. You could also do something else really simple as like a side dish to do with cherry tomatoes is whip up a pesto. Maybe you're also growing basil. You could whip up a pesto and just toss cherry tomatoes with some pesto, and that's like an easy, just like tomato salad to serve on the side of a dinner, or with a barbecue or something. Add some fresh mozzarella cheese in there. It's like a little pesto caprese salad situation. And you could make a great way, like we talked about, with the cherries. I was talking about freezing, freezing produce now when it's fresh and in season, so that you have it, through the fall and the winter when it's not in season. So similarly, you could use up some of your tomatoes, make a homemade tomato sauce, or even like tomato soup, and you can freeze those. You can freeze those in, in smaller batches so that you have a fresh tomato sauce in the freezer that you can use whenever you need it. Okay. So this is looking pretty nice. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna zoom you in over here so you can see better what's going on. Okay, so yeah, you can see that. So they're all getting nice and softened. You can see there's liquid in the pan now. That's becoming our sauce. And then we're gonna be adding a splash of white wine in here. So you're gonna use the wine as a way to help deglaze the pan a little bit. So if you have anything, even the liquid coming out of the veggies helps to deglaze the pan, but I'm all twisted weird. Okay, there we go. So we're gonna put a splash of white wine, so that helps deglaze the pan, but it also adds a different kind of flavor and adds more liquid to help create even more of a sauce. If you don't have white wine, or if you don't want to use wine, you could use vegetable or chicken stock or broth too. And then we're also going to be adding lemon juice, which I think this is just about ready for all of that. We have quite a bit of liquid here. Okay. Delicious. All right. So we're going to add a splash of white wine. I don't know really what a splash is as a measurement, maybe like a quarter cup. And just stir that around. And now we want this mixture to come to, a bubble, like a rapid simmer, because we want that wine to cook off. You don't want, you don't want to taste alcohol in the sauce. So you want the wine to have a chance to cook off. So let this mixture now come to a rapid simmer over like a medium heat. And we'll let that go just for a couple more minutes. Okay, let's check on the pasta here. But because I'm cooking whole grain pasta, it takes a bit longer to cook than white pasta, regular white pasta. So, it's done. Okay. All right, my timing's a little off, but So we want to reserve, just reserve like half a cup of the starchy pasta water. We're going to use that to create even more of a sauce, right? Just to add more liquid to create more of a sauce, and it helps for the sauce to really adhere to the pasta. So before you drain the pasta, just get a nice scoop of liquid out of there. I only use like a quarter cup, but I always say reserve extra just in case you want more. Okay, so we have this now at a nice rapid bubble, you can see. So we're just gonna let this bubble so that the wine cooks out just for another minute or so. Alright, so while that cooks for another minute, we're gonna use the juice of half of a lemon. So we can just gonna cut my lemon in half. Okay, so we can add the juice of half a lemon right in here. And of course, if you like it more lemony, add the juice of the whole lemon. Okay. Beautiful. Alright, now is a good time to taste the sauce, and if you feel like it, like I said, if you want more lemon juice, add more lemon juice. If you feel like it needs more salt, add a pinch of salt here before we go ahead and add in our pasta. And just something to remember too is that we're going to be topping this with feta cheese, which is very salty. So, just also to consider that you don't want the pasta to be super salty and then you're putting this salty feta cheese on it and then it all becomes too salty. So let's give it a little taste here. And also you want to taste it to make sure that the wine has cooked out, that it doesn't taste like super winey. Yum. Okay, I'm going to add a little pinch of salt. Okay. Okay, so now we're at the point where it's nice and saucy, right? So we are ready for our pasta. Okay. So actually first we're gonna add in our starchy pasta water. So like I said, I just did like a quarter cup. See if that's enough. You can always add more if you feel like it needs it, but it also just depends. Like this time that I'm making it, it's actually like more liquidy than the last time I made it. So that could be depending on your zucchini, how much moisture is in it, your tomatoes. Okay, and then we want to turn off the heat, and we're going to add a tablespoon of cold butter. So that's why I just took it out of the fridge. You want it to be cold, and what the butter is going to do is add a little bit of creaminess to the sauce. So we want to take it off, turn off the heat. I'm going to use a tablespoon of butter, and I just plop it in right in the middle there, and just let it nicely melt in, and it will just add, like I said, it just adds some creaminess, some richness to the sauce. And that's it. we have a nice, beautiful sauce here. And it really is super simple to make, right? We didn't even have to walk away from the stove. It comes together really quickly. Okay, so now I use a spider strainer. And I'm just taking the pasta right from the pot and going directly into the skillet. And so this, this amount of veggies is of sauce is perfect for 8 ounces of pasta. But of course, if you were cooking for more people and you wanted to use a whole package of pasta, just double the recipe, just double everything else. Oops. So that's it. So now I'm just tossing the pasta in our sauce. It just creates this really simple, light sauce. All right. Some more tomatoes on top, make it look pretty. Okay. Go. All right, so there's our pasta, delish, and our last step is to top it off with our feta cheese. So you just want like a 1/4 cup, like 2 ounces of feta cheese. But, I mean, you can use as much as you want, obviously. And if you wanted to really go all out, you could toss this under the broiler. If you're making it in an oven-safe skillet, you could toss this whole thing under the broiler for a couple minutes and let the cheese get nice and browned and bubbly and melty. So that's that. And then our fresh basil. Just take enough basil to just sprinkle over the top. I'm going to actually just use, a nice trick for something like basil is to use kitchen shears and just cut it. Especially when you're just doing like a rough chop like this for garnish. Kitchen shears are a good tool for any fresh herbs, really, as an alternative to chopping them up. And that is it. So, here we go. Nice, delicious. I'll hold it up one more time. It's hard to see. Delish. So like I said, serve this up with your favorite protein if you want to make it even more satisfying for dinner. And that's it. So this is a nice, super simple, fresh summer dish.